Yo, what's up, y'all? It's the MMA Analyst here to do my preview for UFC 111. George St. Pierre versus Hardy. You know, I'm here, chilling. I'm in the hood. Get it? Alright, that was retarded, Joe. Let's get down to business. Enough with the games. George St. Pierre versus Dan Hardy. Let's talk about GSP. The dude's a beast. Thiago Alves coming off that win. BJ Penn coming off that win. Beat John Fitch up in the beatdown of the year. Beat Matt Serra down. Submitted Matt Hughes. Out-wrestled Josh Koscheck. And then his last loss was to Matt Serra back in 2007 where he got clipped behind the ear. Before that, he has another loss to Matt Hughes. And that's it. Pretty much George St. Pierre, monster, welterweight, best welterweight in the world, hands down. Really, other guys are trying to get to his level, but you know what I mean? They're really just trying to figure a way how to beat him. He's good on the ground. He's got amazing wrestling. Even though wrestling is not, he didn't go to school and, he's not American, do his whole Division I wrestling stuff, but his wrestling for MMA is outstanding. His stand-up is great. His game plans, he's with Greg Jackson. He's talented. He's focused. I mean, he's a monster. You know what I mean? What they say in the Rocky, you can't win. You can't win. I forget the other part of it. It was like something else and you can't win. But the point is, it's really difficult to beat George St. Pierre. Most guys come into the game plan with George St. Pierre doesn't have the heart, or I'm hungrier than he is, or, I'm going to hit him. You know what I mean? And that's a good place to be in if you're the fighter, where they're like, my game plan is to hit him. And that's Dan Hardy's game plan, is to hit him. No doubt about it. If Dan Hardy can hit George St. Pierre flush, hit him in that jaw clean, hit him behind the ear clean, oh yeah. Dan Hardy can win the fight. He's definitely powerful. The Ultimate Fighter, what's that called? The Primetime hype? Man, that's making Dan Hardy look like this dude is the welterweight version of Pudzilla. Pudzilla, that's the world's strongest man. 5 times or something like that. But no, I mean, it definitely appears that Hardy, even though on paper it doesn't look like he's the dude, but man, they are talking all types of good stuff about Hardy, showing how he went to train with the monks, and he's a martial artist, and da-da-da-da-da. And, it actually helps this fight look a little more reasonable. And, I know going into this, when they said, who's going to fight next? He's going to fight Dan Hardy. Everybody's like, oh, really? Come on now. But, I mean, the situation really is, Dan Hardy, he's on, I think it's a 7-fight winning streak in the UFC. He's undefeated at 4-0. He's got wins over Mike Swick, Marcus Davis, Rory Markham, Akira Gono. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody really expected him to do all too well against at least 3 or 4 of those guys. And, he beat them all. TKO'd 2 of them. TKO'd 1 of them. But, you know what I mean? He's not just a trash-talking British dude. He's got some skill. Now, what's going to happen in the fight? The situation is he needs to be able to hit George St. Pierre. Is he going to be able to stuff George St. Pierre's takedowns for 5 rounds? Absolutely not. Is he going to be able to out-cardio George St. Pierre for 5 rounds? Absolutely not. Is he going to be able to go out there and muscle around George St. Pierre? I don't know. I mean, because muscling means you're in close proximity to each other, which means that's the wrestling aspect, and he's not going to be able to out-wrestle him, so already been through that. He's got to hit him. He's got to hit George St. Pierre, and George St. Pierre knows this, and George St. Pierre is training for this. If it happens that Hardy ends up knocking out George St. Pierre, I won't be really surprised. You know what I mean? Because he's a hard hitter. George St. Pierre is a human. He can get knocked out. But what is very likely to happen is George St. Pierre is going to grind out a nasty win where, probably by the 3rd round, excuse me, by the 3rd round, Dan Hardy by the end of that 3rd round, he's not really ready to come out in the 4th. I've had a damn enough. Corner throwing the towel. You know what I mean? And I think that they're going to stop this. I think his corner is going to stop this in between round 3 and round 4. That's my pick. I guess that's a TKO. Next fight, Frank Mir versus Shane Carwin. Frank Mir trying to be trash talk king of the world. He's trying. But now that James Toney's in the UFC, that is not going to go well anymore. But he was doing all right. Let's go with Shane Carwin. Shane Carwin, all of his fights ending in the first round. All of his fights happening within like 2 minutes. Like, he has like one fight that went past the 2-minute mark. And like up until his UFC times, a lot of people thought that was, just because he was fighting a lot of, lesser skilled dudes. But Gabriel Gonzaga took him out in 1 minute and 9 seconds after getting dropped, after getting side control, pushed up against the cage at the bottom, with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 250-pound black belt on him. Neil Wayne, all right, whatever, knocked him out too. And Christian Wellich, 44 seconds. Definitely Shane Carwin's a big guy, powerful guy. Very strong hands. Not as big as the UFC hype machine wants you to believe he is. They always talk about how he's almost as big as Brock. He's not as big as Brock. He's not as tall as Brock. I think they got him at like 6'9" or something crazy like that. And seriously, they've added about 3-4 inches to his height. I think he's like around 6 foot or something like that. But anyways, he's still big. He's still powerful. And he's still doing his damn thing. And, he's got, excellent power. Just straight power. Also trains with Greg Jackson. Just a monster. Really is. He really is a monster, and he's very dangerous. And he's not really going to get out wrestled by many guys. And Frank Mir is definitely not going to out wrestle him. He's not going to try. Frank Mir is going to go out there and try out strike him. And then if it goes to the ground, I think he's going to try and out ground him. You know what I mean? He's going to just try and be Frank Mir on the ground, and hopefully, Shane Carwin, won't be able to do what Brock Lesnar did. The situation with this fight is like this. When it's on the fight, neither guy is going to oppose when it's on the feet, neither guy is going to oppose it. I don't think Shane Carwin's going to be like, oh, I can't wait to get the takedown. And I know that Frank Mir's going to be like, oh, I can't wait for this fight to go to the ground. But if something happens, somebody gets tagged, somebody does go for it, I don't think the other guy, which normally in the situation would be Frank Mir, is going to oppose that either. So the minute Carwin wants this fight to go to the ground, whether he's in trouble or he's just tired of what's happening, it will go to the ground. So the question is, what's going to happen at each point? I think on the feet, the whole thing is Shane Carwin's got that one-punch knockout power. Frank Mir's abilities definitely improve with his stand-up. And then on the ground, I think he has that ability to pull off something like that big wrestling blanket situation that we saw with Brock Lesnar. Frank Mir is coming off his win over Chet Congo, where he choked him unconscious. Before that, a loss to Brock Lesnar. Before that, surprising win over Nogueira, a submission win over Brock Lesnar, and a submission win over Anthony Hardonk. What do I think is going to happen? When it really comes down to it, I just think that at any given time, the fight can be ended like that. But only by one guy. And I think that one guy is Shane Carwin. I'm going to pick Shane Carwin. I think this fight will make it into the second round, but not out of the second round. Shane Carwin by knockout. Next, Kurt Pellegrino versus Fabricio Camoes. Fabricio Camoes actually trains with my jiu-jitsu instructor, George Brito. Or at least they're like in the same camp. And like George Brito cornered him in his last fight, where actually he went out there and got a majority draw against Cal Uno. This fight is made the main. I think it's made the main card because of what's happened with Thiago Alves, which we'll get to that in a moment. But basically, Camoes Morango, a.k.a. he's on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fight winning streak, 8 fight undefeated streak, hasn't lost since 2006. He's got 2 losses, he's got 4, but of those 4, he's got a tough loss to Gleason Tebow back in 2005 and Luis Azeredo in his MMA debut in the year 2000. Tough guy, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, black belt, just young, when I say young, like 30, 31. And definitely he's well-rounded, but his big thing is the ground game. And what I'm thinking is in this fight, they've got him up against Kurt Pellegrino, who is also well-rounded, but also is good on the ground. This fight is going to end up being, what happens on the ground. Who gets on top, who can keep the other guy down, who can stay out of submissions. Kurt Pellegrino coming off of 3 wins. He's got a win over Josh Neer, Rob Emerson, Thiago Tavares. Before that, a loss to Nate Diaz, a win over Alberto Crane, lost to Joe Stevenson. He's been in the UFC for a long-ass time. But I would have to say in this fight, in this situation right here, I'm going to have to go with Kurt Pellegrino. I think that he ends up winning this fight. I don't know if he's going out there going for takedowns, but I think he's able to stuff takedowns and end up winning a decision. I think it's going to be a very good grappling display. But I do think it'll be Kurt Pellegrino by possibly a split decision. Basically we've got 2 guys who are on the ground. I think Marengo's ground game is probably better than Pellegrino's, but I think Pellegrino will know how to pull out a victory in the UFC. Next, John Fitch was supposed to fight Thiago Alves. Thiago Alves had some irregularity found in a CAT scan, so that fight is off. Ben Saunders requested to fight John Fitch. Ben Saunders was supposed to fight Jake Ellenberger. They said, Jake Ellenberger, look, you're off the card, but we're going to give you your show up and your win money. And I don't know anybody who would turn that down. You mean I don't have to fight? You guys are still going to pay me and for the win, which you probably wasn't going to get? I wasn't going to pick him. Hey, and the UFC will, hook him up later on because the UFC likes when people help them out. Hey, so let's get right down to it, though. Ben Saunders is coming off a win over Marcus Davis. Before that, a loss to Mike Swick. Before that, wins over Brandon Wolf, in which that's where there was a massive Ben Saunders hype going into that Mike Swick fight because of Brandon Wolf's ability to replicate a punching bag or a Muay Thai pad. And then he had a win over Ryan Thomas, a win over Dan Barrera. But the thing about Ben Saunders is he's pretty good on the ground. He's pretty good on the feet. He's training with American Top Team. He's strong. But how good is he? We still really don't know. We know he went out and he got whooped and a really bad game plan against Mike Swick. But then he came back and he knocked out Marcus Davis with relative ease. So this will be a test. I believe a test a little too big for him in John Fitch. John Fitch coming off 3 wins. Mike Pierce, Paulo Thiago, Akira Gono. His last loss is to George St. Pierre. His loss before that was to Wilson Govea. He was supposed to fight Thiago Alves, a guy he already beat, but a lot of stuff has changed. But it was crazy. The betting lines had Thiago Alves as the betting favorite. And I'm like, damn, I wish they would have kept that up because I would have been betting on that fight. But, hey, it's all good. John Fitch hasn't had a win by, non-decision since 2007. He actually said some stuff the other day. Basically, the UFC and the promoters and the fighters are dumbing down the sport for the fair weather fans, for the dudes who are out there who just want to see brawling and whatnot. And I can't really disagree with them, but I would like to see him finish a fight. I do think that he actually will finish this fight. I do believe that John Fitch will get a TKO stoppage of Ben Saunders. Ben Saunders is very good off his back, but I think John Fitch is going to be able to wear him down. Jim Miller versus Mark Bocek. Mark Bocek handling his business recently in the UFC. He's coming off of 3 wins, a submission of the night over Joe Brammer, a submission rear naked choke over David Bilkeden, and then another rear naked choke over Alvin Robinson. He's very good in jiu-jitsu. Black belt, But the thing is, he'll be fighting against Jim Miller. And Jim Miller is basically a strong wrestler who has only lost to big-ass Gray Maynard and Frankie Edgar way back in 2006. Other than that, he submitted Dwayne Ludwig, took out Steve Lopez, took out Mac Danzig, took out Matt Wyman. Like, this guy was killing dudes. I think in this fight, he gets on top, he stays on top, and basically that's how the fight goes until the end of the fight, where it's a unanimous decision, pretty easy for the judges to get this right for Jim Miller. Undercard, Nate Diaz versus Rory Markham. They finally gave him somebody that wasn't a wrestler, that wasn't just going to exploit the fact that Nate Diaz doesn't really know what to do when he's on his back in the UFC to actually get a win. But I think it's not going to work. I think he's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. I think he's going to lose by knockout to Rory Markham, and that sucks because I do like Nate Diaz. Ricardo Almeida versus Matt Brown. The time has come. I'm going to pick Matt Brown. I don't think I picked Matt Brown yet. I think he's 4-1 since going in the UFC. I think I picked against him every single time. I'm normally not that bad with picks, but I guess the nickname The Immortal has made me susceptible to, anti-picks. And in a fight where I would like to see Ricardo Almeida win, I'm actually going to pick Matt Brown. Rodney Wallace versus Jared Hayman. I'm going to go with Jared Hayman. I'm going to go with Husmer Polaris over Tomas Dural. I'm hoping Husmer Polaris gets a leg lock here. And Matt Riddle versus Greg Soto. This is a tough one. I'm going to go with Matt Riddle. UFC 111, Saturday, somewhere in America. Watch it, enjoy it. MMA is important, y'all. Peace.